right as the options market closed, within 2 minutes of the option market closing, and brought up his sign and said, "These are the tariffs." And we had that extreme sell-off.
Yep.
And since then, all we've done is rally. But now we have this Greenland thing going on. It's pitting us against the world in both scenarios. One is with tariffs, where we're saying we're going to put tariffs on everybody. So it's everyone versus us, right? Yep. And the Greenland thing, too, is we're taking Greenland, and there's no one else that's saying, good idea, U.S. Everyone's
First of all, but don't confuse this with a quote, don't bucket us all into the U.S. This is one psychopath, okay? This is nobody else. There's no support for this in Congress. There's no support for this in the Senate. There's not even support for this outside of a few small advisors. There's no support for this anywhere in the world or any of our allies. There is no support for this.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of The Drift with Sosnoff and Mesh. I'm loving this and I'm excited to be here as always. Tom, I really have reached a point in my life where I'm doing exactly what I love when I'm speaking to you once a week. The fact that I was able to move that from once a month to once a week, I feel really appreciative of that. And I just want to make it great. And we left off last week talking that we were going to talk about single points of failure. And in a market right now where it's been since November, I think, early November, since we hit our highs. We're in mid-January now, so we're like 3 months without setting new highs in the market. Then you start to look down and say, what could happen? Where could we go? And when we look at that for 2026, what could really derail us?
You know, Adam, you're a fintech entrepreneur. I'm a fintech entrepreneur. I mean, in our own respective worlds, we're both single point of failure. Or we both present a single point of failure to investors, to customers, that kind of thing. I think that on many scales, we're obviously not public companies, so it's a little bit different. But I think that, when you get the public company arena, there are definitely companies that have, single point of failure. I've talked extensively about Michael Saylor being a single point of failure for Bitcoin, actually. And I think there are interesting situations like that. There are certain companies that potentially could be single points of failure too. And then there's also politicians that, present a lot of risk. There's no question, as far as the world, we talk about leaders of the world and specifically leaders of the free world. Trump, for better or worse, presents another single point of failure, in his own way. And I don't usually look at single point of failure as a good thing. I think it's a dangerous thing, of course. So I think just being aware sometimes people aren't aware of the risks in the marketplace or the risks of their investments. And I think that's something that, we look at, at least I look at when I'm considering, making investments or I'm considering investing in something. I think that's a decent variable in the equation of whether or not to proceed.
So individual companies that could be single points of failure.
Well, you would argue, I think, and it didn't necessarily work out that way, but I would think that at the time, I looked at Steve Jobs when he was sick as a single point of failure. Now, if you look back, at the last, whatever it is, 15 years since he died, it didn't play out that way.
What about now? Tesla, Elon Musk is a single point of failure.
Well, there's no question. Elon Musk, he's got his paws into, SpaceX and XAI and Tesla and whatever else. I would think that all of those companies would be, I don't even know what the future of those companies would be.
I guess I need to define single point of failure, because for me, it was kind of like that Michael Saylor conversation where Bitcoin implodes, MSTR goes down, it takes the market down with it. So Elon Musk would be a single point of failure to Tesla.
But he'd also be a single point of failure for maybe not today, but at the time, it would have been in the whole electric car movement.
Okay, and that's what I'm more talking about. What's the domino that sends things that you never considered being related to it down?
Well, in the tech world at the time, it probably would have been Steve Jobs. I mean, now you'd probably have to look at it and say, "Wow, it's probably Jensen Huang type thing."
And then that's more like something, if something happened to him that would cause.
Right, there'd be a ripple effect, and Sam Altman, that kind of thing in the world of, AI, both the software side and the hardware side. I think that those two, would be, you could argue that those two would set the industry back quite some because, investors would be nervous.
I think what keeps me awake at night is whenever I hear about these catastrophic market events, not only would I have not been able to see them coming, I wouldn't have understood them to even see them coming. So if you look at the mortgage crisis, and what happened with collateralized debt, I never would have understood that scenario. When you look at the book, When Genius Fails, and what was going on with them that almost brought down the market. We're not even seeing what's going on there, and I guess that's what I'm wondering is what is it that I'm not seeing
I
that
don't know
that's
that there's
significant?
anything that you're not seeing. I just think that it's something to be, um, it's just something to be aware of. I don't necessarily think that there is, I don't think that there's something that you can do about it. I just think that, sometimes we get a little bit foolish in thinking that there's no risk, or that, sometimes we don't, I don't think we look at all the, you know, potential areas of risk. I'm not suggesting that that should hold you back at all. I'm just suggesting that it should make you be reasonable. Like you're never going to be all in on something.
Is it Michael Burry? Is that how you say his name? Michael
Yeah.
Burry from The Big
Yeah.
Short. So he was played by Christian Bale in The Big Short, and he profited from the mortgage crisis. He has a newsletter now, a subscription newsletter. I think it's $39 a month, 76,000 subscribers, talking about AI sell-off as one of the lead topics lately. Just uh, just interesting to note,
Yeah,
that
he's an interesting character. I can't decide if it's, listen, I don't buy into any of the, hey, I called this, down move. So did 50,000 other people if you call every move. But he is interesting, and I enjoy some of the topics. I think, you know, some of it's self-fulfilling. I'm not sure how much different he is from Teresa Caputo type of thing. I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of people that just get up there and say, to sell a newsletter, to do whatever. Um, I'm not really sure why he sells a newsletter.
well, I think $39 a month times 76,000 is pretty good.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just,
Right.
if you're a multi-billionaire, I'm not sure that what that model is.
Right. I guess maybe like the same way someone who, Aaron Rodgers playing football in his 40s. Like he doesn't need to be. It's the winning, the being right in front of an audience, maybe.
Yeah, except sometimes I wonder with professional athletes, I kind of think that even though we all think that they don't need to, I kind of think that they need to. Like I'm not, I don't know about Aaron Rodgers, and I think there's definitely some athletes that probably don't need to, but I don't know if Tom Brady needed to play when he was 45. But um I think most of these athletes, they kind of need to. I think.
Uh, yeah, I hear what you're saying. There's been a lot of stories like that. Um,
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about the market, I heard your predictions that you thought the S&P will be lower by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Uh, I've kind of been in a 3 month, really hard, struggling to pick a direction with the market. We haven't hit new highs. We're not really going lower. And it seemed like last year there were a lot of things early on that were very much in play, like unbelievable opportunities. If you look at the way nuclear stocks exploded when Three Mile Island reopened, if you look at quantum stocks and how they exploded, AI stocks exploded. I don't see that this year. I don't have a new one. Like I'm not like this is the next thing. And then I look at those things and I think, do they have to go forwards before they go backwards? And if they do, how do we approach this market right now where it seems like there's more downside than upside for the near term?
That's a very fair question. I would agree with you that when we started last year, where were we, like 50, 57, 5,800, something like that. And then in April we dropped down to 4,900. But I think we started the year around 58, 5,900. I mean, this year we're starting the year at 7,000, right? So in the S&Ps, so it's a pretty big difference, almost 20% higher than where we started last year, and almost 35 plus percent higher from where we bottomed last year. So I agree with you. I don't think you can look across I don't think you can look on your watch list and say, oh man, this stuff looks cheap. I mean, I think there are things that are getting a little cheaper, but I also don't think anything, in my mind, the only thing in the whole world that looks cheap right now to me I feel like interest rates are a little too high, and so I feel like the bond market's a little too cheap. But other than that, and I don't think that's a huge play right here, I just think that's a play. But other than that, I'm having a hard time finding stuff that I think is cheap that I want to buy. It's easy for me to find stuff I want to sell.
I bought last week. The Qs were trading at like 623. And it was last Thursday, so today is Tuesday, and Monday the market was closed for Martin Luther King Day, so 3 trading days. I was like, I feel uncomfortable with the world right now. The president's trying to take over Greenland, which I was like, what? And I'm like, we're just going to take over Greenland, and now Europe's sending troops there, NATO's sending troops there, and I was like, someone's going to say something stupid. Something stupid's going to happen. So I bought the 619s for $1.67. I bought 40 of them. But then I ended up only holding on to 5. And so I bought them for $1.67. They're worth $10.50 now. So it's like 4 grand, but it should have been worth 36,000. But you'll slap me if I say what could have been. I know that. But then over the weekend, he said we're gonna impose more tariffs. And I also, there's a bit Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's deciding on the legality of tariffs. Well, and when we're talking about points of failure, I have so many questions about that because, first of all, I've read somewhere that 96% of the tariffs are paid by Americans. Did you hear something like that?
Well, I don't even know why that would surprise anybody. Tariffs are just a tax on Americans. I mean, there's nothing else to it.
So it's
I mean, I don't know, that shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, of course, the American consumer pays the tariffs. That's all there is to it.
but it's presented as though it's a
No, it's
win.
not
Yeah.
presented any differently. It's the president of the United States is incapable of telling the truth, so he lies to the American public, but everybody else presents it correctly. It's tariffs are a tax. That's why the Supreme Court, it's very difficult for the Supreme Court because they're friends of the executive branch, but hopefully they make the right decision and tell it like it is.
If there's a 10% tax, when he said there's a 10% tax on, pick a country, 10%
A
tax
tax on the UK.
on the UK. Okay. How is it that the Americans are paying that?
Well, because every item that you buy that comes from the UK, like on your next Range Rover, it's 10% more expensive, unless the American, car dealers pick up the additional tariff. But other than that, you pay for it.
So it's a tax without calling it a tax.
It's a
tariff.
tax. Yeah, that's a tariff. It's a tax.
Okay.
That's why the market's down today, because it not only is it disingenuous, it's anti-competitive. It just puts us in a very it puts American companies that do business in certain places at a big disadvantage. Now, a lot of times what offsets, and this is the part that's surprising about the stock market, but what's offset a lot of the tariffs is the fact that the US dollar has been crashing. And as the dollar crashes, I mean, theoretically, the tariffs, it offsets the tariff costs. but that's to other countries, not to us.
So, do you know what the number is? I could look it up about how much has been paid in tariffs.
I don't know exactly what the number is. I'm guessing, I think it's probably, I mean, Trump likes to say it's like 16 trillion, but it's more like 200 billion. I mean, he's pathological in
There's
his lies.
195 to 217 billion.
Okay, there you go. So I was pretty close to spot on, but he likes to say trillions, but again, he's pathological. So that's all there is.
So let's see. I just want to, how much of the tariffs have been paid by Americans?
Well, the majority are, but some of the companies have eaten, like, some car companies have eaten the tariffs because they want to keep their sales up. Sometimes American corporations eat the tariffs. Um,
96%.
okay, there you go.
96. So now, so okay, so this is what I'm getting at. So there's a Supreme Court ruling, and by the way, I'm not being political to the point where I just took the Instagram app off my phone because I can't stand looking at political discourse anymore, and I felt like it was the most negative thing in my life.
Okay,
Um,
then yeah, then
so
yeah,
so
cut it
this
out of your
isn't
life.
political. This is just trying to understand the economics. But when the president says, if they rule against me, if they rule against these tariffs, then we're going to have to give all that money back. Wouldn't it then be going back to the Americans? Would that mean everyone will get a check? Like, what's that mean? If the
Something to
Supreme Court
that.
ruled that,
Well, something, I don't think that's the way they'll rule it, but yes, that would be the logical thing. I mean, if you were a company and you defrauded somebody out of some money, you'd have to pay them back. If you're the, US executive branch and you essentially defrauded the American consumer out of $200 billion, you got to give it back.
what do you think happens?
I don't know that the Supreme Court will rule in such a binary state. If the Supreme Court was being objective, they will rule that. See, the problem with tariffs is that this is the worst economic policy in probably the history of this country. But the stock market hasn't, the stock market hasn't rolled over yet because our, the companies, the structure we have here feeds everything into the American economy. So we have a very strong, economic foundation here, and we've been able to maintain these very lofty levels of listed markets. I'm not sure that if the Supreme Court rules against that, there's anything that's going to be. I don't know if that will be interpreted negative at all. I think it'll probably be a positive.
If they ruled against the tariffs?
Well, I mean, Trump's policies are not widely there. Nobody likes them. They're not well accepted by economists and most smart people think that this is a horrible economic policy and don't really understand it. So I think it'll be viewed as a positive if it gets overturned by the Supreme Court.
Positive in that the market would go up.
Positive in that the market would go up.
And so, I mean, that the two biggest market moves we've seen in the last 2 years was March, April 2025,
Yes.
where Trump went on after 4 o'clock, right when the market closed,
Yep.
right as the options market closed, within 2 minutes of the option market closing, and brought up his sign and said, these are the tariffs. And we had that extreme sell off.
Yep.
And since then, all we've done is rally.
Yep.
And
Well, the
now,
market's gonna discount any political fundamental news, any of that. The market's eventually gonna discount. It's gonna get emotional at first, which is what the whole tariff thing did, and then it discounted it and then brought prices back into where it thought they should be. I see nothing different happening this time, other than we're just starting from a higher level.
but right. But now we have this Greenland thing going on where
That's
the US
completely different. Yeah.
the US wants, well, it's not completely different because it's the same thing. It's pitting us against the world in both scenarios. One is with tariffs,
Hmm.
where we're saying we're going to put tariffs on everybody. So it's everyone versus us,
Yep.
right? And the Greenland thing too is we're taking Greenland and there's no one else that's saying good idea, US. Everyone's offended
First of
by
all,
that.
but don't confuse this with a quote. You don't bucket us all into the U.S. This is one psychopath. Okay, this is nobody else. There's no support for this in Congress. There's no support for this in the Senate. There's not even support for this outside of a few small advisors. This is not, there's no support for this anywhere in the world or any of our allies. There is no support for this. This is one person who's lost his mind. I mean, let's not try to defend, his psychosis. I mean, let's not, it's indefensible. These are our allies. These are not, this is a ridiculous argument. This is something that, you got a bug up his butt about this from somebody. Who knows? It's not, I doubt it's his idea, but who knows? And there's no support for this. This is not America. Americans are 96% against this. This has nothing to do with America. This has one person.
It's funny because I just tread lightly here because I think I know my audience, and I know my audience is more on the right. I know you don't care, and
My audience has always been split down the middle. I will, I will trash talk Trump and shit talk Trump all day long, and I don't lose anybody because I'm open to political discourse, and I love everybody that trades, and I think everybody should be able to have this discussion. And I don't care. Some of my best friends are, are Trumpers. I don't care at all. You know what? We have to talk about it. We have to be open. I could care less. And I've been like this for, 40 years. I'm never going to change.
no, and I don't want you to. I just explained, where I one time on a call brought up something about global warming, and it was like the chaos that ensued was like, I'm not going there
It's
again.
okay. You know what? I'll get 10 times as many emails when I trash somebody that people like, and I'm all for it. And people will end up saying, you know what? Love you, but hate the way you think. Okay, great. I'm cool with that. That's cool. Like, you know what? We don't all have to think the exact same way, but I do think that Americans have gotten to the point. This is not something where this is not a 50-50, especially Greenland and certain things. This is not a 50-50 thing. A this is a very dramatic change. And right now, with respect to Trump, you have an incredibly unpopular president who's in a lot of trouble and refuses to recognize it.
Just talking about though the us against the world, which is with the tariffs and now Greenland.
Yeah.
Like when I look at these moves, like let's put it, if I was going out and I had someone that I thought didn't like me and we might get into a fight, I wouldn't say something that pisses off everyone else in the room. So all of a sudden it was not just me versus that person, it was me versus everybody. And when we like go after Greenland right now,
Yeah, but
like
you don't think,
at a certain point, when we talk about single points of failure, there could be a massive
yeah,
move to alienate the US because
it already is happening. But the guy gets off on this. This is his. If he's Popeye, this is his spinach. He digs the stuff. He loves it. He loves to be that outlier. He loves that contrarian spot where he is the only one who thinks like that. He doesn't care. He loves it. That's where he gains all his strength. That wakes him up. Okay, he loves to be the one that everybody else, wants to hate. It's a dictator complex, but you know what? It's this time it's not going to work because Americans don't like that. It's not the way we think. We are a nation where we want everybody to like us. We do
that's what
not
I
want.
thought. Well,
We
I don't
do,
know.
of course.
Yeah.
We're the friendliest nation in the world. You ever go around the world and say hi to somebody on the streets? Doesn't work. Like nobody talks to you. I mean, you're from New York, so it's a little different because people there, not everybody says hi. But you go around the rest of the world, you go to Eastern Europe, you go to Asia, you go anywhere. People do not say hi. They don't talk. Americans will tell you their whole life story if they met you for 30 seconds. We are a very, very friendly culture, and we don't like when people don't like us. And but Trump is trying to flip the switch on that. He doesn't care. He likes it when people don't like him.
By the way, I went to school in Michigan. That was the first thing I noticed when I went from the East Coast to Michigan was how everyone looked you in the eyes and said hello. And I
It's
was
the
like, that's so
Midwest, man.
cool.
It's the
The
Midwest.
Midwest is
Everybody
great.
here. It's the
Yeah.
best thing about Chicago. Everybody is friendly in the Midwest.
But play this out now. So we have this going on right now, but I don't know. I don't know where it goes. I don't know who else gets offended. But if these countries wanted to get together and say we got to teach the U.S. an economic lesson, would it be with our bonds? How would
No, they
they?
can't. It'd
They
be
can't.
incredibly difficult. Nobody wins teaching the U.S. a lesson. Like you cannot win. The U.S. is everybody needs the U.S. and we need everybody else. I mean, it's like this is a global economy. Trying to create and trying to be essentially to isolate yourself economically is would truly be a disaster. And I don't think that anybody in Europe or anywhere else in the world would benefit either. The U.S. is an integral part of almost everybody's economy, and because we have all the money, and all the money flows through us, and everything's based in dollars, and you know, yada 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 yada. It's impossible to break that apart. You can retaliate different ways, but this this is a global world. That's not going to change. If it does, we are in so much trouble. That's an economic meltdown. I don't see that happening.
That's a single point of failure.
I do agree with you there. I do think that is Adam.
That's what I was talking about. That's the things that I think about, like
I
that.
just don't I don't see that happening. I don't believe that one person can pull that off. I don't think that's possible.
So when you see the market sell off on the Greenland slash tariff talk with
Right.
reciprocation from the other countries,
Right.
you think you think it's a buy the news event, not a sell more.
No, I do not think it is a buy the news event yet.
Okay.
I think the market was way too expensive at 7,000. I think it's I mean, having a 2% or 3% or 5% sell off, I don't think would surprise me for whatever the reason. Maybe even a 10% sell off would not surprise me. And I think it would be probably good for, all those involved. I don't necessarily think it's a buy, but I don't think that, markets don't sell off just because of some kind of, event like this. Markets sell off because they're ready to sell off and the event just sparks it.
Kind of like Fed announcements as a catalyst for a move in either
Right.
direction.
Right.
Okay.
I think a sell-off would be pretty healthy, but I don't think a sell-off is something that anybody can orchestrate.
So today's not a sell-off.
Oh, today's a sell-off.
Today's 2%.
Yeah.
2% on Nasdaq. What's a sell-off? What's a what's a move that gets you out of your seat and excited?
You mean opportunistically? I would say you'd want to get a minimum of, 10%. You can't even think about it under 5%. And I think that 10% to in that 10 to 15% gets you, thinking things are okay, things got a little cheaper. You know,
Well,
you get 20% off some of these NASDAQ stocks, you get Nvidia to drop by $35, you get Apple to drop by, $25, that kind of stuff. You're getting a lot more interesting.
where did you go out over the 3-day weekend coming into this week?
Um,
How are you positioned?
I went home short over the weekend, short deltas in the S&Ps, but I'm also short some silver. I'm short silver, long gold, and that trade is not working.
You've been saying that. I don't. So what's
I
the?
know, I
So
know. I have a bad trade on in gold and silver. Silver is stronger than gold, and so that trade is not working at all. But I also have on, let me see S&Ps here. Yeah, S&Ps I'm a little bit short. Not short enough, but I'm short.
let's say you weren't. Let's say like or like me, you only had a little position on, and so you missed this first move. So you come in kind of flat. So you're happy
Yeah.
that you're not negatively impacted by a two
Yep.
percent sell off. But then it's always like you don't really want to chase it down. Do you sit
No.
out and wait for for when you think you could be getting towards the bottom to go bullish? Is that the play?
I these are the hardest things. After a 140 point S&P sell-off today, or so far today, I'm definitely not buying them yet. That's for sure. I'm inclined to sell any kind of an uptick, either in the last half hour or overnight, because I think tomorrow there'll be another sharp little down move. But that's just a trade. I would not be a buyer until, I would guess, at least another, oh my God, at least another 200-300 S&P points. My ultimate goal is to help people recognize their value both at work and with their portfolios. I think the two ways that people can build wealth throughout their lifetime is to know what your value is, what you do professionally, and how to optimize your portfolio, whether or not you're active or passive or whatever else. I want to optimize you in your work in the workplace, and I want to optimize you with your portfolio, and I want to see if I can help people, build wealth in ways they didn't realize they could, just through mechanics and optimization.
And at Lossdog, that they should follow you at Lossdog, right?
Well, they certainly can. We would love it if they did, but yeah, lostdog.com. And we have a show called One Lucky Dog every day, just for an hour. It's a call-in show. You can ask a question about anything. And I just love talking to people about, markets and business and life choices. It's fun. I don't give relationship advice. That's the only thing, because I'm not very good at it. I give a lot of other,
Well,
talk about a
relationship
lot of
with
other
money.
stuff.
Relationship with money.
Your relationship with money is fine. I don't want to hear about your other problems.
All right. So this wraps up episode 3 of The Drift with Sosnoff and Mesh. I'm loving it. And that's the goal. Next week, we're going to come back with whatever. We're going to have actions. People are going to be moving forward. There's going to be steps to take, whether it's in trading, whether it's in business. The goal is that this is an active show. And that's kind of where I'm at. I just want people to move. I want them to feel empowered to stand up and get things done. And I think that's what we're doing. So thank you so much.
Adam, that was awesome, man. You're the best. Thank you so much.